Sometimes I just hate this job. I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. I love her. I miss her. I haven't seen her in a long time. Lynn Bartels from the Denver Post, but I will always love you from the Rocky Mountain News.
Thank you.
And from Fox 31, Eli Stokols.
The third wheel.
The third wheel,
yeah,
always.
For this love fest.
Yeah, you're missing it. All right, so what are we, about 5 weeks into the new session here in the state capitol, and it's getting pretty juicy already. Should we start off with a fun one? I mean, next to TV personalities getting bit by a dog, I think it's got to be Laura Bradford's getting pulled over. Was she drunk? Was she not drunk? Did she pull her weight? And what is this constitutional law about immunity?
Well, wait a minute. We already know she didn't pull her weight because Denver police held an extraordinary press conference to admit that a sergeant lied, and she never tried to get out of the traffic stop. In fact, she asked at least twice, if possibly not more times, to please be tested like everyone else.
You believe her?
Well, her, you mean the cops. The cops held a press conference to say that.
Then why'd they lie to begin with, or who lied to begin with?
They don't know. That's why they have an IA investigation to figure it out. What happened there was the cop that stopped her, and then he saw the plate, called the sergeant. The sergeant told him, don't write a report, don't do anything, don't say anything. They sent her home in a cab, okay? Then the officer who made the stop is seeing these TV reports about what happened and reading the paper, and he calls the police and said, what you guys are saying what happened never happened. She never evoked legislative immunity.
Is there such a thing as legislative immunity? Or is it just having the right license plate?
It may have started with the license plate, and there apparently is a statute on the books.
Well, wait, it didn't start with the license plates because they didn't have cars back in 1870.
Well, right, but I mean, the stop and
the plate on the back of your buggy or your
horse. The
horse.
officer's decision to maybe call her a cab instead of, arrest her may have had something to do with the license plate. And that statute apparently does exist. I don't know how often it's used.
I can understand
but it sounds like a really bad game of telephone because within the police department, because before the story broke, it was being leaked to a reporter at our station, to Julie Hayden, who's been around for a while, has great sources at the police department. And she found out about this through someone at the police department a day or two before Speaker McNulty and the Republicans had even started to deal with it.
The stop was Wednesday night. She found out Thursday.
She found out Thursday. Julie found out Thursday, started working the story. By Friday afternoon, there was an announcement by the Speaker, hey, we looked at this, we decided to pull her off this committee chairmanship until we figure out more. And then the story, everybody knew about it. But there's that question, why someone in the police department was leaking the story, especially it sounds like they didn't have all the information.
I can understand back in 1876 a law that says you can't hold up a legislator who's going to session so that some sheriff in some remote county can't keep a vote from happening at the legislature. All right, I bet that's there. And it's interesting, but it was the reaction by the Speaker that seemed to get Laura Bradford very hacked off. And then a rumor, and was it true, that she was thinking about bolting the party with only one vote keeping the Republicans in control.
When you say, is that rumor true? On tape.
On tape.
On tape to Laura Bradford in her office. People say you're thinking of leaving the party and becoming an unaffiliated voter. Of course I'm unhappy. Later in the interview, I say, I need to be clear on this. So you say that you are thinking of changing your party affiliation because you're so unhappy about how Frank McNulty has treated you with this traffic stop. And her response is to say, Lynn, it's not just the traffic stop, it's what happened last year. She's also on tape with Charles Ashby saying with the Grand Junction paper, I'm 95% certain I will change my party. So
it was just a mess. I mean, the emotions that came out around this whole thing, clearly, there's a lot of back and forth there. She's saying, over the course of 2 weeks, she said a lot of different things, just different people. Obviously, she was upset at some point. Lynn's right. This is bigger than what just happened a couple weeks ago. But was she drinking at the bar? I mean, the night we started to get this information and check around, I had people telling me, oh, yeah, Laura Bradford was at Prohibition, this bar 2 blocks from the Capitol where a lot of lawmakers and lobbyists hang out, before 7 p.m. So this person left at 7, said she was in there at 7. The traffic stop was at 10. So I don't know if there's anybody who comes out of this.
That's just a good weeknight.
But you guys, let's go back on the stop. I think the public was outraged because of the fact that she got to use this obscure get-out-of-jail-free card. But the reality is other legislators driving cars with their license plates have been stopped and charged with DUI. Denver has this policy that a lot of people feel is a very overbroad interpretation of the Constitution. A couple years ago, they got nailed for letting VIPs off or something. So they revised their policy. They look at the statute. They say, this is how we read it. There are people who agree with Denver police that this is how you have to read it. When people say, well, but she's at a bar Wednesday night, she's not in session. Look at the definition of session. The session is the day it begins in January till when it ends in May. I mean, we call it a 120-day session. We count the weekend days as part of that session. If you're a lawmaker, most lawmakers collect per diem for the weekend. So that's in
because
session.
They can be called in anytime, day or night, depends when
Well, and they're
session is.
working,
All right,
actually.
but let me ask you this. Did the speaker do the right thing? Now, from his point of view, there's a story out there that the public is perceiving it that somebody is pulling rank, and so he pulls her off of a committee chair.
He pulled her off the committee before the public knew the story.
Interesting. And then he held the committee hearing, an ethics committee, at which point the cops who were asked to show didn't even show. Nothing happened. She's cleared then, and we're all back to normal. Did the speaker handle it appropriately?
At first, I thought he did. I thought, this is good crisis management. You have this situation where a lawmaker has admitted, yes, I was pulled over for drinking, didn't get a DUI, didn't get sent in, maybe invoked immunity, maybe did not. All this stuff's not clear. But until it was clear, it seemed like he was doing the right thing. Obviously, given the politics and the numbers in his chamber, and a lot of people a couple days later said, boy, he sure gummed this up. But
then
at
again,
the end of the day,
imagine if he didn't.
Right.
And imagine if he said, well, let's just wait to find out.
He could have asked more questions. He could have waited.
He got ahead of it.
Well,
but at
when
the same
he
time,
made the decision to pull her off, he had already been told by the reporters who had been told by police she specifically invoked immunity to get out of this arrest. So, I mean, the knowledge he had was that you can't touch me, I'm a legislator. And so at the time he was like, I'm going to suspend you from your chairmanship till we figure out what's going on. But let me go back to something Bill Cadman, the Senate Minority Leader, said on opening day in his speech. That whole building is about relationships. And if you don't have them, there's a problem. She had a problem with leadership. They had a problem with her. And so I think from some people, even people who aren't necessarily fans of Laura Bradford, who thought that there was kind of this, we got her now, we got her.
What a great thing. It's a junior high school there.
No, it's not junior high, it's high school.
Is it high
school? Gold
school?
Dome High School.
All right. Let's bring it back to some more politics. Just the other day, I think it was yesterday, the civil unions bill, surprise, surprise, passed the committee in the Senate. It's easily going to pass the Senate. It's going to pop over to the House again. They had a chance to pass this last year. A lot of people said it would have been wise for the Republicans to have passed it and gotten it behind them. What's going to happen?
I don't know what's going to happen in the House. Yesterday, it was deja vu all over again. I mean, same hearing room, same sponsor, same bill, same question, same committee, same people testifying. You hear the same stories from couples. You hear the same people testifying against the bill. And same result, passed again. It's going to pass the Senate. It's going to go to the House. The question is, those 7 Republicans on that House committee that hears the bill, is one of them going to switch? And at this point, Democrats were hopeful. They were hopeful they could even get a Republican in the House to carry the bill and sponsor it. Doesn't sound like that's happening. And so there may be more support for it outside the building than ever before. It may just keep coming back if they don't pass it. But I don't know that movement is going to move one of those 7 lawmakers on that House committee.
I think the only untold story out of this whole thing is what happens with Sean Mitchell. Does Republican Sean Mitchell vote for the bill on the Senate floor?
Why is that?
Because it was Sean Mitchell's bill back in 2003 that Tim Gill said inspired him to whip out his wallet to help elect Democrats. It was a sexuality teaching bill, and he just felt Sean was just so stridently anti-gay that he was like, this is it, regime change. And now here's Sean saying, I think maybe this is the time. I will look at this bill, but clearly he's had a difference of opinion. Sean Mitchell would never have entertained this in 2004 or 5 or 6 or 7. So I think that's kind of the only untold story. Nobody thinks it's going to pass in the House. I also think there's less support for it on the House floor than there was before. I think there were
Why would there be that?
Because there were people who said they would support it last year, Republicans who are now in tough primaries, who are never going to support it.
See, this is a lot of people on my side, on the Republican side, there's this big fight going on. A lot of people say, just get it done with. And if you guys got it done with last year, it would have been over, it would have been done, and we'd be moved on. Now it becomes this other big issue that's going to be used in your general election. It's going to be used in your primary. Why didn't you just get rid of it that time? So it falls into the Speaker's lap again. Which committee would he usually send this to?
Judiciary. And that was the irony. Last year, they felt we can get it out of every single committee but Judiciary. And the Speaker, Frank McNulty, sends it to the one committee he should have sent it to, because the Senate Judiciary heard the same bill. So, I mean, it was a great out for him.
But he can, if he wants to, send it to another committee, can't he?
He could.
And that would be tough. All right, let's talk a little bit about these primaries, because this is, after the reapportionment, we've got people who are in the same, or in different districts, that this fall will be in the same district fighting each other. I forget how that worked, but Marcia Luper and the majority leader, Amy Stevens, are now in the same House district in El Paso County.
And some would have primaried Amy Stevens regardless over the Amy Care bill. So the Reapportionment Commission basically just drew her and Marcia Luper together and said, all right, have fun, go at it. And there's not a lot of love lost between the two. Amy Stevens told me before the session started, hey, it's going to be fine, we're going to do our work. But you can already see, I mean, Marcia's running a bill, or has already put forth a bill to repeal Amy Care, which is not going to happen. It's not going to pass, but it's symbolic. And that's what a lot of this stuff.
That bill died, and in a very interesting thing, Marcia Luper requested to testify at a Senate bill. I mean, the only other person I can remember testifying, I think, was Douglas Bruce. Watch out, Marcia.
Just don't kick anybody.
Yeah, well, this I call this primary Real Housewives of El Paso County, because it is just like, I mean, there is blood.
Is there? What makes El Paso County so important this coming fall? I mean, that seems, you say it's ground zero.
It is ground zero. You've got a contested primary in the congressional race. You have Doug Lamborn, amazingly now, in his 3 out of 4 elections, has had a primary opponent. Normally, you have your opponents the first and then never again in your own primary, and he's got an opponent. And then you have 2 or 3 really hot legislative races.
And it's all Republican squabbling, inter-party squabbling.
Oh yeah, it's GOP on GOP violence.
It's what we do best.
Well, the Democrats are pretty good at it too.
Well, I look at now Bill
Bennett,
Cadman.
Romanoff. Right. Do you forget those?
Yeah, but this. I look at, was it Keith King and Bill Cadman?
Correct.
Were put into the same district, and Keith King said, "I'm not going to run against my good friend Bill Cadman." I mean, that's a tough thing to do. I mean, that is.
Yeah, Keith basically
gentlemanly.
pulled out of the race, right?
And there's still so many bad feelings in that building. In a high school setting, right, Gold Dome High School. There's so many bad feelings from what happened with the reapportionment, because there are a lot of Republicans who are really upset over situations like that a guy like Keith King has to basically hang it up. And so that will play out too over the course of the session, especially. Morgan Carroll was a senator who was on the Reapportionment Commission. She's a liberal Democrat, and I'd be surprised if a single one of her bills gets passed in the Republican House. I mean, might pass the Senate, but I'd be surprised. And some of them might be bills that would go through if not for
personality grudges.
Some spite, and said, okay, you're going to do this to us. You're going to redraw these seats. We're not going to. Your bills aren't going to see the light of day.
People always forget, though, those people were drawn into each other's districts after the Republicans chose to appeal a map that was a 9-2 compromise.
But at the end of the day, the story was politically vindictive maps. That's what the Republicans were saying, because they felt like too many of their people. I think it's hard to argue
otherwise. That was a vindictive map.
Yeah, and the way the process played out, maybe they shouldn't have appealed it. They shouldn't have tried to do away with it first. They should have just, taken their ball and gone home after the first map.
The reapportionment committee should have done their job and put together a fair map. According to the Constitution here in Colorado, we keep hearing this stuff about competitive districts. There's nothing in the Constitution about competitive districts.
Well, there's nothing that says too that you can't draw incumbents into the same district, and that's always kind of been a sideline. Like, we don't draw incumbents. Let's move this line a few blocks so we don't have incumbents together. So, I mean, I think the reality is it's hard because you've got a state where the Democrats are so concentrated in one area, but then they have the Senate, they have the governor's office, and you kind of want more seats.
And they have the courts.
Yeah, if you say that. Yeah. We haven't seen the opinion yet. We don't know how it fell down. If you're saying they have the courts and you find out that a couple of Republicans voted for the map, then maybe you can argue that. I have to wait to see what the opinions were, who voted what, for when.
Well, we're talking El Paso County, just for the fun of it. The rise and fall of Douglas Bruce. Jessica Fender did a pretty fascinating story in the Post on this guy who I'm fascinated by Douglas Bruce. I think he's an incredible guy. He's incredibly smart. And some people are taking such delicious pleasure in him being incarcerated for tax evasion. So let's start over here. You haven't been here since the 1990s
No, but I mean,
when this
I think
happened.
there are a few people that have had as profound an impact on Colorado and its history and its politics as this guy. And he may be reviled by the majority of the population, or maybe a lot of people, even Republicans, who don't like to take ownership of the guy because he's kind of an embarrassment in some ways, kicks the photographer, says outlandish things, is sitting there in his court hearing the other day with a Slurpee, which was priceless, by the way. If you're in TV, that was an amazing picture. But this is a guy who's had an amazing impact on the state of Colorado. And while there are a lot of conservatives who might say, we don't want to associate ourselves with Doug Bruce, for the most part, Tabor seems to be still one of those polarizing things, because to conservatives, it's hugely important, and it keeps the state from spending more money than it has. It keeps the state from running up deficits like other states. And yet there are a lot of Democrats at the Capitol, and have been for a while, who have talked about, we have to undo this some way, somehow. And there's a lawsuit right now looking to overturn it, because on the other side, people think that this is the reason that our schools are so underfunded. And so he might be in jail, but he is still a huge presence.
What's so fascinating about it to me is that they've been able to do this little bit of political jujitsu and taken the hatred of Tabor and connect it directly to Doug Bruce, because Doug Bruce is an easy guy to dislike, especially when you work with him. He has a tough personality, and therefore by joining those two together as if they're the same entity, it helps attack Tabor.
First of all, let's talk about disliked by his own party. Go back and read some of the quotes in his lone year there. Jim Kerr, Republican. If you only had 6 weeks left to live, you'd want to spend them with Doug Bruce, because every day would seem like an eternity. Mike May, Parker, the minority leader, Republican, said, Doug Bruce is probably the worst lawmaker in the history of Colorado. These are Republicans.
But then again, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, if you're in office, you're going to hate Tabor. Tabor makes you have to make tough decisions. That means you're going to have to either go ask for more money or do some spending cuts, depending on the tight years. But you've known Doug, and I've known Doug for nearly 20 years, and he is an abrasive guy. He is hard to get to, but underneath that, I think there's a good guy who's trying to change the world, but his Dougness. I think it's Asperger's. I think he just has a condition. It doesn't work well with people, but he has created something that is lasting and changed the Constitution.
One of the Paul Weissman, a Democrat, when there was a group of school children going through the Capitol, and Doug Bruce got up to the mic to talk, and he said to them, "Look at kids. Here's a lesson to learn. He's going to get up and he's going to argue a point, and he's going to be right, but it's probably going to fail because of who he is." And it goes back to what Cadman said and the whole Laura Bradford thing. That place is about relationships. I mean, he goes up there right away, is Doug Bruce to the core. I mean, what does it tell you when he'd been a county commissioner, when everybody in the county commissioner calls up to the legislature and said, watch out, this guy's a piece of work. The other thing is, there's not a lot of sympathy for Doug Bruce, because he lied through his teeth on the big 3 initiatives on the ballot. He claimed they had nothing to do with them. Then they bring him in before the judge. Oh, it's all from Doug Bruce, and he told us to shred all of our emails. I mean, that's the thing. You can say he did this, but beyond that, he's not proud of this. You're dang right I put those on those ballot because we needed those because they were good for Colorado. He had to lie about the whole thing. There's not a lot of sympathy for him.
On that, I understand your point, but let me get back to it. Doug Bruce might be disliked, but he created something, and he just keeps popping up. He's a Bobo doll. I mean, this guy will you want to put him in jail? It's just going to piss him off more. Wait to see what happens when he gets out. What are these attacks on him? Was this politically motivated? I mean, he has
the guy didn't pay his taxes.
Well, politically motivated by a Republican Attorney General?
Hang on. Yeah.
Okay, so what does that tell you?
But through the years, Doug has claimed that a lot of the attacks he's had, a lot of the problems he's had with his properties and the inspectors and complaints and legal actions have been brought because of political bias against him. I think there could be some truth in that. Maybe,
but then did you ever talk to anybody who lived in one of his rental properties? I mean, the guy. When you're talking about it, people are taking delight, but
listen,
there's also...
You work for the Post. Before long, you're going to be living in one of those rental properties.
I already live in one of those rental properties. I live in Northwest Denver.
Really?
But the best tweet about the whole thing was from Patrick Malone with the Pueblo chieftain who said Doug Bruce has to go to the pokey, and he goes, instead of that teardrop under his eye, he's going to have a dollar sign tattooed under his eye. I mean, people were, laughing about it.
Do you have any sympathy for Douglas Bruce on a personal level?
Well, it's not a personal level. You know what? He put Tabor on the ballot. The voters voted for it. I mean, you vote for these ballot measures, you get them, and what have we said all along to people? You get these things, Amendment 41, you have no idea what's in them, and you approve it. Look at the people. We only thought this was about voting on tax increases. We didn't realize it would have all these effects. That said,
nobody believed that.
My issue with him is what happened with the big three when he lied through his teeth and said they had nothing to do with him, and he had Frida Poundstone saying, well, I just thought it was a good idea, so I put it on. Yeah, because Jeff called you, because Doug called him and all that. That was the part. You don't even have the you-know-whats to say these are my ballot measures.
When they send me up the river, will I get any sympathy from you?
Well, you said earlier, you talked about you're a sexual predator, so this might be good for you.
It's just a romantic style, really.
Okay.
That was before the show. We weren't supposed to talk about that. I think the debate's going to go on Tabor, and I think maybe this is another flashpoint. I think with Doug, he's an ideological zealot, not to mention kind of a maladjust guy. But that, this is ideology, and now it's affecting the entire state. And so people have to look at this, and his personality is a part of that. This guy sold the state on this constitutional amendment, and we continue to assess, is this the right thing for the state? And that's a battle we'll keep having at the legislature, and
when they had the hearing, my partner up there, Tim Hoover, went up and wrote something for the blog on it. No, it's Tabor. It's wonky, right? Mm-hmm. It was #1 on the blog list right away.
Yeah. If you follow politics here, Tabor.
It's not politics. It's everything. When I came to the Rocky in '93, they told me that when the Rocky in 1992 named Doug Bruce Citizen of the Year for passing Tabor, that they had hundreds of cancellations from teachers. Really upset by it. I mean, so this it's everything.
Polarizing,
I mean, we think it's politics, but we forget it's the wastewater operator who works for the city of Cortez who's impacted by it. I mean, this guy has something named after him, de-brucing.
Yeah.
It's nicknamed after him. It's not in the law. It's nicknamed after him. All right.
What's wrong with that?
No, it's pretty cool.
Nobody's saying
I know.
How would you even say that?
De-Caldara?
Yeah.
Means you won't go out with me anymore.
Satan.
All right. Let's bring it back to the legislature. What else is hot? How's the governor doing? It seemed like last year he was very strategic in the way that he played it low key, at least publicly. And I'm not seeing him take a major lead on any sort of legislation this year. Am I missing something?
No, I think his style is the same. I think the pinnacle privatization push that had to be shelved was a bit of a setback politically for him, but he didn't really push it publicly. He saw that it wasn't going to happen, and he stepped back from it, and now it didn't play out like this big. He didn't lose a whole lot of political capital in that debate. And I think, it remains to be seen as we go forward. There are things he's pushed that haven't gone anywhere, that Democrats seem reluctant to support. He's being who he is, and we'll see how many controversial pieces of legislation get to his desk.
Can we all agree, and you've seen enough, Bill Ritter, as wonderful as a man as he is, was not able to do that job. He did not know how to run that office. He wasn't a strong executive. That's my sense.
I know. I'm going to go back to something we're talking about, Hickenlooper. We have a different Republican Party chairman now, Ryan Call. Mm-hmm. And I think if Dick had run and have Dick Wadhams, I'm sorry, we're serving, I know, everybody knows who Dick is, right? If he were in, I think you'd see things hammering him every day. And I think that's part of the thing is I actually think the Republican Party has let Hickenlooper alone somewhat compared to, we have all this proliferation now of conservative blogs and that sort of thing that go after him and say, oh, he doesn't take an opinion, he doesn't do that. And yet they say all that, and the day before the session, Hickenlooper holds a fundraiser with every important businessman in Colorado with an R behind their name at the fundraiser. I think that history will be kinder to Bill Ritter than we are in this day and age.
Why is that?
All these businesses that are moving here and headquartering here, they were able to do it because of a bill that Bill Ritter pushed. And at that bill signing, a Republican...
Which bill?
It's a tax credit thing, but not the kind that a normal one, because Colorado can't do it because of...
God bless
Tabor. Okay.
Tax rate. Why don't you call it what it is? Corporate welfare.
Well, people seem to like corporate welfare better than the, welfare, tart welfare.
Oh, they're both the same to me.
Okay.
Choosing winners and losers through government is not the way freedom works. And that's what we saw with the new energy economy. It's what we saw with TARP. It's what we saw with the stimulus package. And it's not working. Bill Ritter, my point was, I don't think he was a good executive, that he couldn't run the ship. Roy Romer, he could run the ship. Bill Owens could
went in
run
there
it.
as a longtime politician.
Exactly, that they all had experience inside that Capitol and the high school that you talk about.
Yeah, there's
Bill
a
Ritter
learning
didn't.
curve when you take over as in that executive role. I think Hickenlooper has the experience of having done that as mayor for about 8 years. So he goes into this and he knows how to manage. I think, and this is a mundane point that everybody's made over and over again, but the fact that it's a split legislature just makes it so much easier for Hickenlooper than for Ritter. I mean, if there's one guy in there who was holding his breath, not wanting Laura Bradford to switch parties, it was probably the guy on the first floor. Because
That's interesting.
Oh, without a doubt. In fact, Mike Litwin wrote that in their column that Hickenlooper was panicking on that. Let's also not forget that Bill Ritter, in his first year in office, had like a 68, a really high approval rating, 15% higher than John Hickenlooper in his first year. But it sucks to be in charge when the economy goes, and that's what happened,
Speaking of the new energy economy, we've got a minute left. Tell me your predictions. I know that there's...
On what?
Does Excel still have a stranglehold on that building?
Yes, but in a good way. Because they hire smart lobbyists.
Oh, there, it's all better. All right, less than a minute. Any predictions for the rest of the session?
No, I think it'll be interesting to watch civil unions. I think it'll be interesting to watch the in-state tuition, the sort of social things that TV gravitates to. It'll be interesting to see how they put together the budget, if the forecasts are still good and they can kind of do a budget that everyone can agree on, or if there's some fights there.
Any big surprises this year?
Oh, there already is one. Every session is unpredictable, and this is what you've already had this year. The budget's going to be war. It'll be beautiful.
War is fun, but only when it's polite. Thank you both. Hey, check me out. That's at the Independence Institute, Facebook, Twitter, all that other stuff. And Sunday nights on KHOW at 5 p.m. Tell a friend, and we'll see you next week. Keep it right here on Colorado Public Television.